Hello students. It's me, Miss P. I'm here for an art project. I'm pretty excited about this one too. This is a topic that I usually don't get into until third grade. But my young artists, you guys are so talented, so smart. I know you're going to do great on this project. And this project is it's a 1-point perspective project. And with 1-point perspective, we can create the illusion of space. Now, we've all heard the word space before, but when I say space, I mean when we look into a picture and we can see the world. Maybe that's not a great explanation. A simpler explanation would be creating space is making something look a little bit more three-dimensional, a little bit more real. And that's what we can do with 1-point perspective. So let's get started. What we'll need for this project is just a piece of paper. I've got a black marker right here. And then we're also going to use a ruler. And this part's very important. You're definitely going to need a ruler. And you'll need something to color with, whether it be markers, watercolor, crayons, colored pencils. Really, whatever you have will work. So let's get started. The first thing that I want to do is draw what I call a horizon line. Now, a horizon line is where the sky meets the ground. And that's my horizon line. This is where going to be the sky, and this is going to be the ground. I'm giving actually a lot of space for the ground. Pretty soon, you will see why. So, here's my horizon line. Right around the middle of my paper, I'm drawing a small dot. It's right here. You may not be able to see it, but if you can, you're going to use that dot as a vanishing point. Now, the vanishing point is the point furthest away from the viewer. And with 1-point perspective, we use it to create that illusion of depth. Everything is sort of pointing towards that vanishing point right here. So, with my ruler, I'm going to draw lines from that vanishing point to the edges of my paper. All right, let's see. That might be enough, but if you want, you could do a line here and maybe a line here. The most important part of this project, guys, is to make sure that all of these lines that you draw are going towards our vanishing point, right at the center here. So, another thing to consider, right now is actually what they call the harvest. It's the harvest time of year. And if you read any old books or stories, you'll realize this. And this is why we have Thanksgiving. It's celebrating the harvest. So, I thought we would draw sort of a harvest type scene. I thought we could draw different rows of crops in a farm. And they would be in these different sections we made. But as we get closer and closer to the vanishing point, which as I said before is further and further away, our crops are going to appear smaller and smaller. So for example, if we were going to draw a pumpkin, let's draw our pumpkin. So I've got a big pumpkin in the front here. And I'm gonna draw a curvy sort of, this is how pumpkin stems look a lot, is that they'll have that little curl and swirl in them. So I'm adding a couple of those with my black marker. And then there is my pumpkin. So there's one pumpkin that I've drawn. And then as I draw my other pumpkins, they're going to be smaller and smaller. There's a second pumpkin, and that's smaller. It's the same thing as we go along. Each pumpkin that's closer to the vanishing point is going to be smaller because it's supposed to look like it's further away. So then I'll draw a very small one here and an even smaller one even further. So I have some pumpkins. I'd also like to draw some other crops. We could draw a whole number of things. Let's say we wanted to draw some corn. So we had our corn stalks that kind of come up, and usually corn is not opened up, you know, but we'll make it look like that way just so we can have the cool looking corn. So I'm drawing some corn, and corn kind of draws, or corn grows with a with lots of green sort of covering, and then you shuck the corn. I don't know if any of you have ever shucked corn, but that's when you take like the corn wrapper off and you get the corn on the cob. So we're drawing that. I'm drawing two next to each other, and then it's the same thing as I go further and further away from that bottom edge of my paper. The corn appears smaller and smaller. I'm drawing this all in pen. You should probably use pencil first. I've had a lot of practice to draw things like this, so it might appear a little bit easier, but I would always suggest using pencil first. So my corn is getting smaller and smaller. Small. So there's my corn. Now let's see, what else could I draw? I could draw some squash. That is a good fall thing to eat. And squash, again, grows on the ground. And squashes are kind of like pumpkins, actually. They sort of grow in the same way. But my squash is going to have, I'm going to do those same sort of curls and then lines up around the squash. And maybe even some leaves. But these shapes are pretty simple. And if you can't draw the shape perfectly, you don't have to worry, because every squash looks a little bit different, right? Just how every pumpkin tends to look a little different. No pumpkins are really exactly the same, but I'm drawing some vines from my squashes, so they look a little bit more like real squashes. And again, this is very similar to the setup I'm putting around the pumpkins, which are right next door.
So that's a smaller squash.
So as you can see, these squashes are getting smaller and smaller, and then I'm drawing some little swirls around them to sort of represent all the vines that grow off of our squash. So now I'm sort of accenting my drawings right now. I'm drawing some lines on our corn stalks. So they look a little bit better. Now, we could do something like lettuce next. We could do flowers. There are a whole number of things we could do. I actually would like to do some carrots. And carrots, usually you don't see the orange part sticking out of the carrot, out of the ground. Sorry. Because carrots grow in the ground and usually you only see the green part on top, which I like to draw like a little bit of a cloud. Some people draw it a little bit differently, but I like to draw like a green cloud coming out of the top. So I'm drawing lots of carrots, and they're sticking out of the ground a little bit right here. I hope you're able to tell what I'm drawing when I draw it. But these are going to be carrots. They're just sticking out of the dirt. So this line across here is kind of how I'm making my dirt. And then the carrots come out of the top. If you want to draw your carrots all out of the ground, that's fine with me. It doesn't have to look like the most real sort of farm in the world. That is okay. So my carrots are obviously getting smaller as I go further away and less detailed. So those are my carrots. Let's see, what else do I want to draw? Maybe I'll draw some lettuce. And I'm going to draw my lettuce like it's kind of circular. And then I'm going to draw some, they almost look like fish scales. And I'm going to put some leaves around them right here. So they could be cabbages or something like that. I think that's how I'll draw those. Starting with a circle, drawing those the little leaves coming out. These are definitely more exciting than just drawing things in the ground, like onions and things like that. So,
as you can see, they're getting smaller and smaller as we go further and further away. I think in this row, maybe I'll just draw some flowers to keep it nice and simple. And far away, it's going to be like, they'll just even look like little circles with dots in them as we get further and further away. But those are my flowers.
my flowers getting smaller and smaller as we go further and further away. And then, what should we put in our last little thing? I guess we could just draw like some grasses coming out of the ground. Very simple, like that. Because that could be a whole number of things. I'm going to imagine that these are onions. And I know when I cook, I like to make sure I have a lot of onions in my cooking. So I think if I had a farm, I would definitely want to make sure that I was growing some onions in the ground. So there are my onions. You can say this is onion grass. And my onion grass is getting smaller and smaller as I get closer to my vanishing point. Okay. And then, for my last thing on this side, I guess I could just do some more flowers or some wheat or something like that. I think I'll just do some more flowers. And maybe I'll just make them slightly different.
Of course.
When we're further away, they get smaller, but I'll make those like a slightly different color than the flowers on the other side. So wow, in this time that I've had, I've drawn a lot of different stuff. I've drawn lots of different plants. And you can do this as well if you want to look up different sort of crops and things like that. You can do that. But I think in the sky, I'm going to have a big sun You can say it's rising or maybe it's setting. Then I think I'd like to draw a little barn back here. And I think I'll end up coloring that red. But I've got my little barn with a little barn door. Oops. So there's my little barn. And then also I think this is like where they keep the wheat a lot of the time. They have a sort of structure that looks like that. You can draw that if you want. And then, you know, I've got some clouds in the sky. If you wanted to draw some horses or anything like that, you could definitely do that. I think I'll just draw some clouds. Birds if you want, whatever you please. Whatever you like to do. But now that I have that all done, I think I'd like to color my drawing because I think it'll look super nice once I get it all colored in. So I think I will grab some crayons and color mine in. And I'll probably end up speeding this up, but just time to color now, and I will get back to you. Okay, guys, so here we have it, our 1 point perspective crop area farm. I gotta come up with a better term for it. While I was coloring, I remembered that this is called a grain silo. I'd totally forgotten that term. So as you can see here, I used my markers and crayons for the background. Rubbing the crayon on the paper does take a while, so I sort of wished I used a different material, markers, or maybe colored pencils. Or no, not colored pencils. Maybe watercolor would probably go a lot faster for this project. But coloring this was really fun, and I'm very pleased with how it came out. And I look forward to seeing your project. So give this a shot. I'm very excited to see these. Oh, I forgot a little part of my barn here. There we go. Now we're all done. All right, that's all for today. I hope you enjoy this, and I will talk to you guys soon.